Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Geoff Pender, joined here today with my colleague, Bobby Harrison.
Hey, Geoff, how you been doing, man?
I've been doing well, Bobby. How about yourself?
I'm all right.
And we have a special guest today. We have John McKay. He is chairman and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association, where I think we just were talking. You've been with the association since 2008.
Oh, wait.
That's right. I know you've been around Mississippi politics for a while.
Fresh out of elementary school.
That's right. That's it. Right. That's it.
Yeah.
The MMA itself was a little surprised by this. It dates back to 1951.
That's right.
The voice of industry in Mississippi as it has been billed. But anyway, we're here today with. We've heard bits and pieces about this and everything, but kind of a big announcement. We'll let you make it.
Sure. No, that's great. No, and guys, thanks for having me on. MMA has been around for a long time. Funny sidebar. The current chief of staff of the governor, her great-grandfather was the first chairman of MMA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was. Ann Hall Brazier.
Wow.
Her great-grandfather was worked at the paper plant up in Grenada. He ran that company and was the founding chairman of MMA. So the history of my organization goes back a long time, and we have a long history of advocating on behalf of industry across the state. Sure. We are a statewide trade association, and really the initial start of it got going as Mississippi was moving out of the agricultural economy and into more of the industrial economy. And we've, since our inception, have advocated on behalf of manufacturers to make the business climate conducive to growing business and providing jobs and really growing communities. So, I was very fortunate to get on in 2008 and work on a lot of different policy areas. When I took over the top role, obviously very interesting, exciting stuff. And then as we moved in, the pandemic hit and there was some challenges there. And then we started noticing just in general a kind of changing landscape in the association world, where companies obviously were cost conscious about where they invest in membership dollars. A lot of these companies get hit from all sides, local organizations, state organizations, and then national groups as well. And so sort of the inception of this conversation to look at more closely aligning our statewide business groups started kind of in 2002, 2003.
Okay.
Just general conversations.
Yeah.
And so those conversations really have revolved around the State Chamber of Commerce, which is the Mississippi Economic Council, led by Scott Waller, and then BIPEC, which is the Business and Industry Political Education Committee.
That's good. I always have to look at my notes.
It's a long one.
I just know BIPEC.
It's a mouthful,
Sure.
And that's led by Derek Easley. And the three of us started having, again, just really informal conversations about what we could do to more closely align. As you can imagine, statewide business groups like ours, there's a considerable overlap in membership. Sure. There's also overlap in leadership. So we're asking these companies to invest their time and their resources in us so that we can advocate on behalf of them. And we started thinking of ways to make that more efficient and work more closely together just to make it better for everybody. Those conversations continued for a while, and then in the fall of last year, we decided to really take the next step and make it more of a formal initiative. And so we started by having conversations with our boards and allowing them to help, guide us in where they wanted to go. And what we quickly decided and what they expressed to us was they really saw some value in truly aligning and potentially even merging the groups. So in order to do that, we wanted to go through a deliberate process. And so last fall, we got approval from them to start the process of working with a consultant to go through essentially a year-long process of some focus groups, conversations with leadership, membership, to get a sense of what they wanted and what direction they wanted us to head into. And so we're we're about 3 or 4 months away from the conclusion of that year-long process, and we're really to the point now where our boards have had input and actually taken action at steps along the way.
Votes on this, right?
So the last vote that they had was essentially to offer a letter of intent that all the boards adopted that said, look, we're to the point now where we need to really start doing some things to prepare. And that's, sharing financial information and those sorts of things that we need to do. And quite frankly, we just released, had a press release go out that offered the new name of the organization, which is the Mississippi Business Alliance, which kind of captures what we're trying to do. We're trying to align all of these various interests and industries really under one umbrella to focus on how do we make Mississippi the best for doing business in the country. And that's our mission. We're starting to put some framework around how we want to do that and the structure of the new organization and things like that. But really exciting times and great feedback from not only our membership, but quite frankly, policymakers and legislators. I've gotten a lot of great texts and calls over the last few days from our press release. So, really exciting times.
So this new group, as I understand, will kind of be in place and in effect January.
Yes, that's
26.
There's some legal and financial things that we'll have to do in the fall, but the entire process should be completed. New organization
by the new legislative session.
That was always the goal. Is
Sure.
2026 hit the ground running with the session.
Okay.
And somebody's got to run the organization.
That's right.
so talk a
And
little
I
bit
think
about
you
that.
got
I
volunteered, right?
I got tapped on that one. So obviously I'm very grateful that folks in leadership and quite frankly the other guys that are involved in this process had the confidence in me to look at me as the new leader. So the way it's going to work is Scott Weiler, who's the head of MEC, he is not retiring. What we're going to do there, so I'll take the top role. He will move over and concentrate on the foundations. So these are the entities within the umbrella organization that do things like education, research, things that are in place already, like Leadership Mississippi. That's a great program to expose up and coming leaders to everything around the state, the communities that make Mississippi great, the industries that really drive the economies around the state. And y'all know that various parts of the state have different types of economic activity. So he's going to concentrate on that side of the house. And then Derek is really going to move over and handle the political operation. Okay. And that's just it's going to look a lot like what BIPEC currently does, getting involved in elections. They put out a legislative scorecard. So
is that still going to
do all that, but then also have an educational operation that, if there's a policy issue, he could engage on advertising and letting the public know, targeting messaging to legislators and those kind of things. So essentially you take the combined resources of these three groups, put them under one umbrella, and you just become more efficient and effective at communication and moving policy along.
You mentioned that membership in these three business groups is kind of overlapped or whatever. The merged entity, are there going to be a lot more members, or is some of that overlap? What's that going to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, just to give you kind of a size and scope, MEC has got about 1,000 members, just south of 1,000. We have between 500 and 600, and BIPEC is much smaller. They have about 200 or so members. And when you kind of do a Venn diagram of the three, there's a couple of hundred members in common there. So it's not like you can add all of them together and get your new number.
But you will see
you will see an increase.
Group.
You're looking at a new membership of around 1,200. And our hope is, quite frankly, that we can demonstrate value to grow that number to get businesses that aren't engaged right now for whatever reason to see that not only do we present value in, let's say, the advocacy arena, but some companies are more interested in like the research arm. So that would be like on the foundation side, they could invest in this organization on that side to work on issues like workforce development, which is huge with the creation of Accelerate Mississippi in the last few years. some of the just workforce challenges around the state. I mean, those are the things that excite some companies, and that we essentially want to offer a home to any business, whatever their aspect in the political arena or the research arena. That's what we want to offer.
The three organizations through the years, I mean, you kind of touched on this, have had kind of different missions to a certain extent. I mean, will all those missions and continue under the umbrella now? I mean, like, BIPAC was more involved in politics and endorsing candidates. I guess MMA was to a certain extent, but CDF was not. So how's all that going to work?
Yeah, so and that's a really good question, and that's one of those things where when we started this conversation, we wanted to make sure that those traditional aspects of our organizations weren't completely lost. And so you're right, MEC has never been involved in direct political action. They've never had a PAC. They're one of the only state chambers in the country that did not get involved in that area. And that's just been a legacy over decades. They were always seen as sort of above the fray, 30,000 foot, big policy ideas, bringing those forward to policymakers. MMA has, quite frankly, always been known as sort of the sharp elbows around the Capitol. We engage in those discussions.
Right.
Since I've been there, we've been really active on tax and regulatory reform and workforce development, those sorts of things. And then, like you said, BIPAC has always been involved in elections and those sorts of things. In my view, you take the best of all of those and bring them under one umbrella. And again, wherever you're comfortable engaging on that level with our organization, we're going to have a home for you. So yes, we're going to do all of those things, but hopefully do them just more effectively.
So y'all will endorse candidates?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess one question I have, I guess we'll see, but I would just suspect more unified, more members, whatever. Are lawmakers more likely to listen to you? I guess would be the question. Obviously, I think our legislative friends have always been very receptive to all of our groups. They know us. We've worked with them for years, and they respect us. But that's certainly the hope, is that when you bring all this under one umbrella, that you become more effective at communicating those ideas that businesses are looking to move forward. And, quite frankly, now when you have three separate groups, it's not that they play one off of the other, but, there might be the topic of the day and they want the business community to weigh in. And let's say one group weighs in early. Well, then everybody's sitting around, well, what does MMA think, or what does MEC think? And it's a real question of logistics, because each of us have a process where we get the approval to engage on an issue from our leadership. And that takes time, and different aspects go into that. And so under one umbrella, I just think we'll be more nimble and more able to move that conversation forward. And that's what I'm most excited about, because, they don't have to go to three different places. They can just come to one and they get a pretty quick answer. Well, we've seen certainly since 1951, a lot of changes in Mississippi. Went from agrarian to industrial, and now moving beyond that with data centers and all that. How do you get everybody under this umbrella? Does that become easier with this group, or tougher because you're trying to merge different groups? Or
and that's always been one of the key considerations, is because, as you can imagine, right now I have a focus of manufacturing. And it's pretty easy. I mean, obviously there's different sectors of manufacturing, and quite frankly, sometimes they disagree about issues. So it's not like all kumbaya under my tent right now. When you broaden that out even further, you could potentially run into issues like that. But overall, if you look at issues since I've been around, so 20 years or so, I can only think of a handful of issues where the business community as a whole was not aligned. And you could look at issues like whether it's the state flag or infrastructure and transportation investments, tax reform, and that we've gone through over the years, especially dealing with business taxes like franchise tax and inventory tax, and those things that directly impact business issues. I just think you're going to have not only the ability to move quicker on those issues, but to get a consensus within that broader group, because again, we're all at the same table, we're under the same roof.
Is it fair to say, I mean, on the franchise tax, y'all did speak with one voice. I mean,
yeah.
But on the more recent tax cut, y'all were kind of didn't take a position. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, and it was really because of the flavor of the tax cut. Obviously, I think any tax reform that is produces some positive momentum for the economy, we would generally support. For the personal income tax, and you get down in the weeds pretty quickly, because prior to the middle tax cut, which is in 2022, I think. Can't remember exactly.
22.
Yeah. That actually decoupled our tax code. So prior to that, we had a single income tax rate, which applied to individuals and corporations. Right. That tax cut decoupled them. And so the corporate tax rate stayed at a 5% top rate, and the income tax started to be taken down. Once it just started to be about the individual income tax, we told leadership, we said, certainly go forward with your plans, but that's really not an issue that our members are engaged on. But if you can look at that issue and pair it with, like they did this year, with an infrastructure investment piece, we certainly want to take a look at that and be helpful where we can. So that's kind of where you blend some of the tax issues together, and that's where we engaged.
I'm sorry, we're kind of getting a little bit off topic, and I apologize. Geoff can get us back on topic, but are there some? I don't know if your membership would be an example of this, but some businesses do pay the personal income tax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's quite honestly where we were supportive of the entire package, because, and again, kind of down in the weeds, but a lot of businesses, manufacturers, and your smaller businesses, retail, that kind of thing, are formed as pass-through entities. Right. So your LLCs and S corps and those kind of things, and they pay at that individual rate. So that is absolutely certain. Some of those things that business as a whole, there are some that were very interested in that. So again, I think bringing everybody to the table under the same umbrella, you're able to get those issues on the table and take positions from there. So I think it's going to work out really well.
One thing I'm curious about, and I'm wondering if this new entity might bring a change there, but we've had a lot of large companies coming here. We're seeing the AWS data centers. We saw Steel Dynamics, Continental Tire, some big projects bringing in a lot of cases, international companies. Mm-hmm. They're not your Mississippi homegrown, how's your mama and them folks you already knew. Are they integrating into y'all's groups, or are they just kind of so big they just do their own thing?
No, they are. I've actually had conversations with AWS recently, and again, they're typically conversations involving aspects of their operation for me. Now, I think when AWS came in, they engaged with MEC, the state chamber, fairly early. And again, a lot of these companies, when they come into a new state, they're looking to engage in organizations that have, number one, a statewide reach, and the ability to integrate with the larger business community.
So this might
even accelerate that, because we will be by far the largest broad business group in the state. And so I think they come in, they make the announcement, and they start asking around, who should we be involved with? I hope our name's at the top of that list.
So we might start seeing like Bezos at Hobnob.
Now that would be something.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Are y'all still going to do those Hobnob? And
so that what we've done in this transition period is we've started these transition teams internally with our staff, and so we've taken our 3 staffs right now who right now aren't connected, aren't under the same roof. And we've purposely added them to these transition teams. And so one of them is specifically on events. We had a long meeting the other day to really look at the calendar for 26. And so the short answer is you're going to see a sort of blended events calendar, especially in 26, where you're going to see events that look similar to what MMA and MEC did over the past 10 years or so. So Hobnob specifically is the big fall event that MEC does, where statewide officials come and speak to the business group. We will have something like that next fall, but it'll just look a little bit different. We're looking at tweaking, how that operates, who speaks. Obviously we got 2027's right around the corner, and that looks to be a wild time in Mississippi politics. And that was, quite honestly, one of the main objectives when we first had conversations about this, is whatever we decide to do, if we move forward, we not only have to be up and running, but we have to be established going into 2027, because you could just tell that this is going to be a very interesting time and something that's going to affect Mississippi politics and the economy for a decade after 2027. So it's very important.
So, real basic question: where will y'all be located?
Well, it's funny. The two questions that I got most when we first announced we were having serious conversation was, what's your name going to be, and where are you going to live? So I'm the only one that actually owns a building. So the MMA building just north of the Capitol, I'm the only one that actually owns a place. So temporarily, at least, we'll be under the MMA umbrella at our building. Going forward, we're going to probably form some sort of steering committee to look at other options, because we're pretty much going to max out my space in my building. But proximity to the Capitol is important, and quite frankly, the capital city is important. And I know that some associations over the years have moved to the suburbs and that sort of thing. But I think as the state's premier business association, we're not going to be successful unless Jackson's successful. And I think having our offices in Jackson is probably what you're going to see.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
One other thing I'm curious about, and you touched on this, all three groups as they stand now have certainly weighed in on business issues, taxation, but there have been times where either y'all have weighed in, or I can even think of some times where it seemed like lawmakers wanted y'all to weigh in, and y'all are like, we're staying out of that. Do you foresee this new group being more vocal on political issues outside of just, nuts and bolts of business operations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely a possibility.
The flag comes to mind.
Absolutely. Well, and what you saw in that debate, MEC had really taken a public position well before the flag actually got momentum for the change. We engaged heavily in that discussion, but didn't come out years ahead.
But y'all were involved in the summer of 2020.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that was driven broadly by my membership. Not only us as an organization internally, but our leadership and our membership. I never got a bit of pushback or anything like that. What we were dealing with, we were talking to companies. I'm not going to name any names, but there were companies who have executive training programs, and they were rotating these high-level executives from other plants around the country. And there were some that, quite frankly, they could not get some of their top-level executives to relocate to Mississippi, so they'd house them in, Tennessee. And they would drive to work every day, which just didn't make sense. And so there was really consensus around that issue. But I definitely think that you will see us engage on issues that are important to business. What I would hope we would avoid is becoming one of those organizations who feels like they need to weigh in on every single topic of the day. That's something I've tried to avoid, because, quite frankly, that sort of dilutes the mission. And I think being laser focused on issues that directly impact the business community and drive economic progress, that's what we really want to focus on. But some of these issues, like the flag, they directly impacted that. And so if I can draw that line, that's where I want to go.
Yeah, there's been times in history where MEC was kind of taking, you alluded to the flag, and some people have complained that they have not been vocal enough on Medicaid expansion. That may be a topic for another day. But I go back, way back before, even before, when I was a little boy in the 60s, and I think MEC being the leader, in terms of Jack Reed from Tupelo stepping up to say, we got to, we have to support the public schools and continue. And it was during a time when there was talk of not funding the public schools, and MEC was a leader at that time. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if you think y'all can still do stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's funny you bring up Jack. He's very engaged in MEC still to this day, and was actually
his son.
Yeah. You're talking about his dad, but the Reeds are obviously. I mean, they have that legacy up in Tupelo. So they, that kind of thing is something that I still think that you're going to see. And again, I think if you can draw that straight line to business outcomes, I think you're going to see this new entity clearly engage on those things, whether it's education, healthcare, insurance issues right now are popping up that I think that's sort of a sleeper issue that's going to start affecting the economy, whether it's down on the coast or just in general. And obviously workforce. That's really the glue in the past, I would say 4 to 5 years, that has united the business community. And that's an area where I get the most excited, because for a long time in my framing of it, workforce was sort of put as this separate bucket over here. Education is workforce development, whether it's K through 12, community college, IHL. Every aspect of that issue is workforce development. And I think for so long in this state, we've segmented off those areas, and it's like this group does this, and then they move over here and they do that. We've got to get away from that and really start integrating workforce development issues up and down that pipeline, because you really want to think of it as a highway with various off-ramps. And some people just aren't going to go to a 4-year institution, but they need to have the skills, whether it's coming out of high school or a certificate program at a community college, whatever that looks like for an individual. We as a state need to invest in those pathways. And that's where I'm really excited about the work that Accelerate's doing. Governor Reeves has been laser focused on this issue as well with his team at MDA. Y'all know this, every project that comes into the state, that's one of the first things. Now speed to market is probably the most vital aspect, but workforce is top of mind for those conversations. And so that's really where you're going to see a lot of the focus.
My guess will be this new combined group. Like I said, I think we'll definitely get lawmakers' attention.
Yes.
On issues.
And you mentioned the let's call it leadership. Whether it's the speaker, the lieutenant governor, or the governor. They do, from time to time, ask us to engage on issues that they're interested in. And that's one of the problems that this new unified group will address, is because now they will just come to one of our groups and say, hey, we really need you to take this to your board, or we need you to engage on this issue. And obviously, if it impacts us, usually we've already been engaged or thought about it at least. This will give them an audience where they can come to us, make that pitch to our group, and then we can go forward again unified, rather than one group going off in this direction, then another one either staying neutral or going in another direction. It doesn't happen a lot, but it's definitely something that we've seen more and more lately that this will address.
So how will the board be configured?
Yeah, so we're actually putting those ideas on paper. You're going to see basically an operating board that's reflective of the membership, and that's one of the keys from my group's perspective. Is our board is made up of large companies, the household names, the Nissans and Toyotas, and the utility companies, and big players in Mississippi. But a lot of our board are the small to mid-sized manufacturers, and they are the bread and butter of the manufacturing community in Mississippi. There are almost 2,000 manufacturers around the state. And we're talking from a metal fabricator that has 5 employees all the way up to Ingalls down on the coast. I think it is critical that this new board not only have those large players in Mississippi's economy involved. They're very important. They provide thousands of jobs to Mississippians. But the smaller manufacturers in particular, I think you're going to see them integrated on this board just like they are now. Their voice will be heard because some of their issues are different than, whether it's a bank or an insurance company or a utility company. And that's something that I've been very deliberate in capturing in the leadership discussions, that you're going to see that. Because we want to get geography. We want to make sure that from, the state line in Tennessee down to the coast, that we have as equal a representation as we can, because again, the different kind of microeconomies around the state, they're very important, but they're also very different. Very different. Yeah.
So it'd be a fairly good sized board, or? Yeah.
And we're looking at ways to do that. I think what you'll see is an operating board that's going to be, let's say between 40 and 50 members, and they're the fiduciary. They handle some of the down in the weeds business of the organization. And then you're going to see a larger advisory board that's, probably closer to 100, again, to capture some of those voices that need to be heard. And then those ideas and those policy considerations then roll up to the main board. So that's about what you'd expect.
I know MEC in recent years had would have these big, huge meetings or whatever, and little clickers where everyone, 1,000 people could vote.
Yeah.
Is that something you're going to continue?
Yeah. So that's very important. I think they've branded it their roadshow, and they go around, and I think they hit at least 20, 25 spots around the state. And we do a scaled down version of that for manufacturing. We typically in a year, we go around and hit between 8 and 12 different places. And we try to go to an industrial park and get multiple manufacturers in the room and have kind of a roundtable discussion. You will absolutely see something like that occur. We're trying to figure out exactly what that looks like and make sure that we, and again, it's really about looking at the communities around the state and hearing firsthand what are the issues important to them, and what is moving the needle. One of the questions I always ask anytime I go and visit one of my members or I go speak to a group, what's keeping you up at night? Like, what do you see 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the road that really concerns you? Sometimes those are federal issues that I can't affect all that much, but that's another thing. Under this unified vision, the engagement with our federal delegation is going to become even more important, and making sure that they understand those issues from back home. That's where we're going to be.
Well, this is going to be something we'll watch and want to keep in close touch with you, especially as the session in 2027 comes up.
It's going to be wild. Yeah. I would love to check back in with y'all here in about 6 months.
Absolutely.
And everything is exactly as planned. It probably won't work that smoothly.
We'll hold you to the checking back in part.
No, I would love to sit down with you guys and give y'all the full picture as we get all these details nailed down.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.